Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined today with George Aldridge to give our review on the latest Steven Spielberg movie, Ready Player One, the 2018 science fiction action adventure film starring Ty Sheridan, is it? Olivia Cooke, and everyone's favorite, Ben Mendelsohn. We actually did a video going through more or less all of Spielberg's movies, which I really recommend everyone checking out before this one. It's about a 2-hour video, so it's a very long video, but it was a really enjoyable video to do and kind of set the stage for where we're going into this movie now. You're going to be the book guy on this one, though. Usually it tends to be me. I'm that one where it's like, take a shot every time I mention the phrase in the book, but that's going to you today. How you doing, George?
I'm all right. It's such a horrible phrase. I mean, you get it for Game of Thrones. I had it for Harry Potter, but that was like, okay, there's only going to be 8 of them reviews. Fantastic Beasts is new. So I read it, well, I read it like, 3 months ago in one and a half sittings. But unfortunately, I do have to rep that in the book. It won't be till the spoiler section, though. Yeah. But the one thing I will say is that there are a lot of changes from the book. But I do enjoy / agree with a lot of them. For those that don't know, Ready Player One is based off the 2011 best-selling book by Ernest Cline. You may know him as he's the guy that wrote the screenplay for Fanboys, a very, I don't want to say underrated, but an underseen Star Wars kind of.
It's enjoyable. It's again, like with the references and stuff like that. It definitely has
a big geek, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like he's writing autobiographies into films. It's great, and I believe his recent book Armada, again similar referencey one, that's just been picked up. Well, I say that's just about a year or two ago. That was picked up before it got published, just like Ready Player One was, and of course Ready Player One was picked up by none other than Steven Spielberg to direct. Kind of fitting, given that the book is very 80s orient themed. Lots of your references, your games, your movies, your music, and whatnot. But I mean, I guess heading into spoiler free, do we talk about the plot? Like we can give the basic plot outline that essentially there's a game, the Oasis in 2045 in the future. Real life is rubbish, and everyone loves VR. The giant things play with your heads. And none other than Mark Rylance has. Well, no, that's the film version. But
we're going to be calling them by the actors' names, anyway, so we may as well.
James Halliday and Ogden Morrow both created a games company together. They're like Jobs and Wozniak. Was it Wozniak? It is Wozniak. Yeah. I'm not great at my Apple history. They're basically those two, and they've created this game. And then the real brainchild, obviously, is James Halliday, like Jobs is. And he created the Oasis, and basically everyone in the future pretty much lives within it. People work via the Oasis; they transfer their virtual coins into real money, kind of what you're doing right now, the way around. And it's the way to live in the future. And what happens is James Halliday dies, and he basically sets the challenge of, if now I'm dead, whoever finds my Easter egg I left within the game will inherit my entire company. Basically let the game begin. It's a very simple story, but it's
fairly direct. Like, I mean, it's essentially the plot to Willy Wonka, isn't it? Like golden ticket, like you'll inherit my factory, you'll inherit the company, like $500 billion in stocks and shares and things like that.
It's Willy Wonka meets the Matrix. Like, it's that. I mean, that's actually on the front cover of the book as one of the, you get the reviewers. It's like, wow, Willy Wonka meets the Matrix. It's like, yeah, that's probably the best description I've ever read. And then I guess we get a film adaptation that naturally would have came. This is again very much 80s. The book is very much 80s themed, 80s pop culture, whereas the film, it's not, I don't say more modern, but there's like more modern games like Overwatch and things like that in there, where they kind of change references from purely to 80s to a bit of 80s, a bit before the 80s and a bit after. Which is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's transferring into a film format in modern day as well. Where do we begin? I don't know.
Well, I was going to sort of like go into like what I was like initial thoughts on this movie, like from trailers and stuff like that, and just the history of the book. So as I said, I haven't read the book. I've got a few friends that have, and by the sounds of it, it sounds like the most divisive book in a long time. I've got friends that love it. I mean, you really enjoyed the book. I've got friends that couldn't stand it, and the people that fall on the critical side of it pointed towards the references, in that there's so many of them. It's really nothing more than just a bunch of references throughout the entire book, and that gets old very quickly. And also, like, after my movie finished today, I was waiting in the credits just in case they were going to throw one last reference after the credits. By the way, they don't. But I was speaking to the cleaner of the cinema, and she was saying that she'd read the book and couldn't stand it because it feels like it's written by a child. She says it's written very simplistically. And it's almost like, you know, like a 5-year-old's dream of then this character showed up and then this happened and this happened. She was interested to see the film though, because like you, she'd heard that, you know, Spielberg had changed quite a lot of things from the book, sort of like made it more suited maybe for a movie adaptation. And then we got the trailers out, and in all honesty, like, the first trailer hit and I still wasn't sold on it. I think it was a very poorly put together trailer. It didn't flow like a normal trailer. It felt like a collection of 2 or 3 scenes just like jammed together awkwardly, and the music like didn't flow or anything like that. Then trailer 2 hit, and Van Halen saved that trailer for me, because that's where I got on board with it. I saw what they were doing with the visuals. I guess I'll talk about, like, I think the visuals deserve their own section later in the review, so I'll save it more for them. But I'd say percentage-wise, this is definitely more. There's certain points where it feels like you're watching an animated movie because it is purely just visuals. It's almost like Avatar in that respect. There are those moments where we do snap back to the real world, but your main focus and what you get invested in the most in this movie is all the stuff in the Oasis, which is just great to look at.
Yeah, heading into the film, I mean, the book had come out. I bought it. I never read it. Obviously I bought it when Spielberg was announced director. That's really when I think it actually got the, whoa, Spielberg's doing this. Everyone poured in to get it. And I just had it, and just like many of books, I just didn't bother reading it. And then last year, trailer 1 came out. I think it was Comic-Con time-ish.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And it was like, okay, I still haven't read the book. I don't know anything about the film. And it was like, oh, it's just, okay, this looks a bit different. There's a lot of references here. Then they dropped trailer 2 at Christmas with Star Wars. And then I was invested because they actually gave some of the story away. You know, as soon as it cuts to mark violence, I'm dead. Whoever finds my Easter egg will inherit my entire company. That is the plot, and they put that in one trailer, and then you're invested. It was, I don't know why it wasn't in the first trailer. Yeah. And after that, I was like, okay, now I'm really looking forward to this. And then I just went out. It must have been like February time. I think I just read it in 2 sittings, and I did enjoy it. I accept all the issues with it. There's no hiding them. It's not. I don't want to say it's not Shakespeare or stuff like that, but you know, it is what it is, and it's something that could transfer into film. But had this not have been Steven Spielberg, I don't think this film would have worked. I think this would have been a catastrophe. What catastrophe? But they did a 3rd trailer. It was fine. Then they did a really random 4th one like a week ago. Gave a bit too much away, but I could live with that. And it's had a very weird marketing. I think. Once, I mean, the issues with the trailers, dropping that other trailer the day Star Wars come out, like I don't say it didn't help, because yes, everyone went and saw Star Wars, but it wasn't still the most perfect of trailers to release with the film everyone in the world wanted to watch. But then it just disappeared. Like, the marketing's disappeared. Then I guess really the last sort of 6 weeks, they've released that amazing poster.
Oh yeah.
And since then, if anyone hasn't seen the poster, it's right here. Very Drew Struzan-ish. Sorry about the reflections, but that when that poster came out, then they upped their marketing game. You started getting more posters. You started seeing the merchandise was getting unveiled, the pops, the figures, the keys. Then suddenly it's everywhere. And the last couple of weeks, they've done a really good job with it. And it's not too little, too late. It's not that at all. But I feel like this could have been, if they'd have had a consistent marketing campaign across the last 6 months, this really could have been big. But then I guess one of the other small issues was this was originally the December release date of last year. And then when Star Wars moved, you know, obviously Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy got along. They kind of just, right, we'll just take the March release date. And I'm very happy they got a March date, because in February they would have probably got crushed by Black Panther. But marketing's been very up and down. They've come out solid at the end. I think heading into it now, there's a lot more people interested. Again, I was a bit hit and miss. I don't know how this is going to work as a film. The trailers haven't done enough for me. And then the reviews sort of came out. They debuted it at South by Southwest, which is like a sort of independent, well, I don't say independent, but it's a film festival. It's not the kind of place you'd assume this would get unveiled, but they got a standing ovation, which was great. Then the reviews come out very positive, and I think it's about 82% of Rotten Tomatoes. considering it's a film about gaming and virtual worlds and stuff, I'm very happy at how people perceived it, and I think that is down to Spielberg. And now I've seen it twice in 2 days, and it's honestly, I mean, you summed it up in a message to me doing summaries first, but it's not perfect, but it's so enjoyable. And Spielberg kept saying to people, "Remember, everyone, this is a film. This is a movie, not a film." And if there's ever been a perfect description of the difference between the two, it's that in this film.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my expectations and stuff, it met them. Like, it's exactly what I thought it would be. As I said, like, I expected to just have a good time, entertaining, references along the way, because I've always said on this channel as well, I'm a sucker for movie references and things like that. So I loved all that stuff. The visuals are great. I had a good time with it, and that's all I wanted from this movie. It didn't go above its station, what I expected it to. That being said, though, like, interesting comparison, you went to see this in 3D IMAX. I went to see this in regular 2D. As soon as the film started off and we get that establishing shot, I'm not going to go too much into spoilers, but you get an establishing shot essentially of Ohio in 2045. I was really regretting not seeing this in 3D because I could imagine it would look incredible like that.
The IMAX was great. 3D's hit a phase with me now where I'm done with it, but IMAX, you have to watch them in 3D basically. It wasn't like noticeably like the film had been done for 3D, which was fine. Like they'd converted it absolutely fine and whatnot. The IMAX was great, but watching it in 2D today, like there's like, I don't want to say no difference because there was a couple of things that I remember that looked a lot better. Being set within the VR world, there was something beautiful about when the film finished, taking off like the headset that everyone else has done it for the last 90 minutes. But I think this is a film that, looking at I went to a normal 2D showing today at my local cinema. That they're showing it in 3D, like half and half. They haven't done that for many months. Infinity was our next month. Every day one viewing is 2D. So it's not a renaissance, but this is a film that you can understand why it's in 3D. But it's a little too late for the format now. But definitely worth watching at IMAX purely for the sound more than anything.
Yes, yeah. And I was saying to you about the glasses thing when you were talking about like taking them off and like putting them on with the characters on screen. It was reminded me of Spy Kids 3D where it had like a little put your glasses back on, take your glasses off thing at the bottom. That would have been cool if they'd have done like that.
I was gonna say like
very gimmicky though.
Yeah, but I remember I think Shy Boy Navigator did it as well.
Yes, yeah, it did. Yeah. Another question before we actually get into our review: what was your audience size like? Because mine was dead today, and I mean, for us in the UK, Good Friday, it's sort of like a bank holiday type thing where everyone's off more or less.
Wednesday, it was the IMAX preview the day before release. Say about 3/4 full, which is for a midweek. That's great, especially in IMAX. Today was, I mean, we were in one of the smaller screens at our cinema, so that was probably 3/4 full again as well. But it's got about 5 or 6 showings today, and I think numbers wise in America, they're reporting that it's going to pull 50 million by the end of the weekend, which I think it's a modest figure for something that's original, that's not a big franchise, that won't be a franchise. I think that's a good figure. It's not a bomb. It's not a bomb. It's not like your Black Panther. It's not a record. It's not a bomb. It's like it's your blockbuster season, and this is your big opening weekend. I think this will do very well internationally. And overall, this will get way past its money back. And I think it's carrying the good reviews, the word of mouth that's going to keep this, I think, in the cinemas. At least not dominate, but I could see this doing well up until Infinity Wars at the end of April.
Yeah, well, that's its next big competitor, really, isn't it? It's pretty much smooth sailing until that one comes out in terms of a film like this. We'll get into the review now then. So I think if we just kick off with the characters, again, this isn't going to be spoiler-filled or anything like that. We're going to keep it very stripped back to what you've just seen from the trailers. What I really liked about this film in terms of its characters was just the world building and everything like that. That's definitely the strong point of the film. The characters, you get this sense that, and you kind of see it today, if you look out at sort of like our age group or certainly younger than us, everyone's on their phones. So I thought that was a very believable setting for these characters. It's sort of like taking what stage we're at now in terms of, you know, tablets, mobile phones, the internet, everything like that, and taking it to its logical extreme. And I thought that was really cool. The character side of the thing, though, that was probably one of my biggest negatives of the film, in that I didn't dislike any of the characters, but I think the character development was slightly lacking for this film. To me, the thing that you're going into the movie for is to see this world, is to see the visuals, and it is an absolute spectacle in that regard. In terms of the characters, by the end of the movie, I never really connected with any of them. Like, they're fine. There's essentially a group of 5 characters that are your main 5 characters, but I would say only about two, maybe three of them are focused on. Some of them do filter into the background. And I don't know if that's a case of, again, going into the book, they are, because you've got a page, you know, it's a book, you could spend more hours on it. They are given more time. They are given more something to do. In a movie, you've got to cut it back and sort of focus on the main people that are driving the plot forward.
Yeah. So you get the high in the book. You've still got your lead two. Your main one's Artemis / Pars. No. Your main one is Wade Watts, not Wade Wilson, whose alter ego is not alter ego, but his avatar is Parzival, the main character. He's the bog standard hero journey character. I don't dislike him. I don't love him, but he's likable. And then you've got Artemis, his cyber crush, who is in the real world Samantha something. You know, they're the lead two. Then you've got H, who is like the orc character who's in the posters. That's like Parzival's best friend, who does a lot of mods and stuff. Then they're really your main three. And then what is they market the high five. The first five characters to find the first key, they're top of the leaderboard that's been vacant for years. You then get Daito and Shoto. Sorry, in the film they changed it to Sho. Don't know why they say 2 letters off, but they did. And they're the two sort of samurai. They're just not important enough to be developed in the film. In a 370-page book, they introduce them after the opening act, and then you learn the backstory. Then they stick within the story and play important roles. I think when you're in a film, it's so much harder to do that.
Yeah,
because I think one thing I've seen the book's point of view, very similar to the Hunger Games, that a point of view book's hard to translate onto a film. I think they did a great job at sort of getting the screenplay. I think Ernest Cline, who wrote the book, did the first draft, and then they kind of altered things, which I quite like because he knew it needed to change for the film. Again, similar to Hunger Games, that was all Katniss's point of view. They eventually changed it into a more suiting film format, but they kind of, the others are more backgroundish characters. I think they just make up the high five, and then you have the dastardly villain, the antagonist, the one and only. Ben Mendelsohn plays Nolan Sorrento, who is basically Director Krennic, who is basically his character from Dark Knight Rises, who is basically King George VI, who he's already played. He is Ben Mendelsohn by himself. He wants control of the Oasis because he works for IOI. The villains, their army is called the Sixers because they've got no faces, or their numbers start with 6. Bog standard sort of faceless army. But
it is sort of like the Empire and the Stormtroopers again, isn't it? Really,
it is, and you know, I mean, it's so hard not to talk about Krennic without calling him Krennic, because I've already.
We're going to be calling him Krennic all the way through this review.
One of my friends, who's a humongous Ready Player One fan, I think she read the book like 3 times. She was the premier of me and stuff. She said to me before I started reading that there's never been Nolan Sorrento is Ben Mendelsohn. Like he is that I could have now I've seen it. There's no one else that could have played that role ever. I don't care what people say. I don't care who they put forward. Only Ben Mendelsohn could have pulled off that role. Yeah. He's basically the IOI. It's hard to explain because the film can't go into it because it gets too not complex, but it's just stuff that really needs to be elaborated upon. They basically do a lot of the internet in the world. They're like the second biggest company behind the creators of Oasis, and they want control of it to basically not monetize it, but to monetize it. Yeah. Basically, they're EA.
Yeah.
Anyone that knows gaming, they
microtransactions, adverts, pop-ups, all that stuff coming up.
All of it. I think there's a great line that's like they show like a display of their plans and like we believe that we can cover up to 80% of their visor until they get seizures.
That's my favorite line of the film.
But no, I mean, it's what you said earlier. It's not about the characters. It's about the world building, the development. Yeah. The characters come within the story, but the most interesting story arc is actually on James Halliday. Once you learn more about his past and his story arc, it's really about him with the other lead characters. Like I said, they're all likable. The villain's lovable. But it just makes for a Spielberg. I don't want to say usual. That's a horrible term, but with Spielberg, he can do the action, he can do the adventure type family sort of film. I can imagine people of all ages probably enjoying this film. Kids would like it. I think adults would like it. we're not really we're still young, we're not middle aged, but it's a film that could appeal to many people, and I think that's the magic of Spielberg. And he's created a story within this. He's got the right sort of characters, the world building to do so, and I think, like I said, because it's down to the simple story structure, that really does help it move forward.
Yeah, it definitely feels played by the numbers, but in terms of the world and what they create with the visuals, although there's like loads of characters you remember, that does feel fresh, that does feel innovative. I loved seeing all these different planets and worlds. Going back to Mendelsohn really quickly, absolutely love Mendelsohn. He's kind of like both of our man crushes, it seems like, on the last few reviews where we talk about Mendelsohn. But if my biggest negative of the film, other than like sort of the lack of character development for some of the core main characters, is that I never felt a threatening presence from the antagonists in this film, Ben Mendelsohn included. Don't get me wrong, he's great. I love Ben Mendelsohn, turns in a great performance. But there's a character that's sort of like a sidekick villain character that resides within the Oasis called IROC, voiced by TJ Miller.
I thought you were going to say Finale.
Or Finale, again, but it's
like Sauvage Oppress.
Yes. They throw in, there's humor involved with them essentially, but the humor never really hit with me, and it didn't really hit with anyone else in the screen, and everyone just kind of watched it blankly. And it was not Michael Bay levels of humor, but it's
gaming humor, isn't it? It's something that some obese person with a gigantic beard, sweat patches, lying down in bed at like 4 a.m. It's the sort of thing they would say to a 10-year-old on a console.
Yeah.
And like there's a couple of quotes which were funny the first time, but nothing really stuck the second. And it's, I don't want to say American humor, but I feel it's more the internet gaming troll. I don't want to say humor. It's just something that they would say, like, he's clearly obese. He's going on about how he's got really bad neck problems, that he can't move properly.
And they repeated that joke so much as well, like 2 or 3 times in the movie. I'm not a fan of TJ Miller. I'm really, really not. I'm sure he's a lovely guy in real life, but he always kind of has the same style of humor and delivery in all of his films. And as soon as the guy opened his mouth, I was like, okay, that's TJ Miller. I get what they were trying to do. They, like, you know, like when you see him, like the physicality of the character, the design itself is really, really cool. And you can clearly tell that it's, you know, just like a weakling, like little nerdy kid trying to compensate by creating like this huge, empowering, like villain character. I get what they were trying to do, but the humor just didn't land with me. And I think that the film would have benefited with more of a villain presence. Ben Mendelsohn's never really gets to the stage where he's terrifying or imposing. He is very much like, he feels like Krennic, like he feels like he's, you know, above his station, like he's trying to control everyone. He's just a guy trying to do his job, and everything's just like, you know, falling apart, and he's trying to like collect it all together and get on with it. Very similar character in that regard. It's just that the villain force, I never felt the stakes essentially of the situation.
Yeah, there's one scene with, I mean, yeah, I think the character of Sorrento is not undermined, but he's below the board, just like Krennic's below below Tarkin and Vader and stuff. And he's got a very good scene, like a really good scene with his intimidation and what his plans are and whatnot. But then they do a couple of other things, and it kind of makes you think, okay, he's just your plot by numbers villain. Even when we get even his in-game avatar, it's basically Ben Mendelsohn but shredded.
Yeah,
looks like John Travolta.
Yeah, I knew it reminded me of something. I was like a fat Clark Kent, maybe. Like no, but no, Travolta. You're right.
John Travolta, isn't it? And like,
yeah, it is.
Touches someone's face. But yeah, Ben Mendelsohn, I think as a villain, because it's that family. I mean, if you look at, I don't want to say Indiana Jones films, but if you look at Spielberg's work, okay, take away like Jaws, the villains, they're always
like that organization, like, you know, in E.T., like
in Indiana Jones, you know who's gonna, you know, like, you know, okay, this villain does this, but you know he's never gonna come close to match up to anything Indiana Jones can do. It felt like just it's a villain of the genre, isn't it?
Yeah.
In those genres of the sort of the action, the action. Is this a family film? Because I don't know if it is or isn't. I felt like it is, but I feel like it isn't at the same time.
I think it's family film. You did make a point there that you think it'd be appropriate for all ages. I think there's like a limit. If you're sort of like tech savvy or like aware of video games and the trends, I think you're gonna like it. But like, for example, my parents are in their mid-60s. they're going to hate this movie. They're not going to get it at all because they don't get the gaming side of things or the internet or the current generation of gamers and, you know, where technology's at, essentially. So I think there is a cutoff point to a degree with people that are going to like this movie. What else can we talk about? Have we gone through all the...
I mean, we spoke about the characters. Like I said, James Halliday's Mark Rylance. He's more in the spoiler section, I think.
Yeah.
But he is Willy Wonka, basically. He's the gaming Willy Wonka.
Mm-hmm.
He's great. And then I guess it's really hard to talk about, isn't it? Even references we're saving for spoilers because I don't care if they're in the trailer. There's the big ones that aren't, so we can't really talk about that. I'd say we actually talk about the world of the Oasis. That could be quite interesting.
Yeah.
So many...
Go on.
I'd say so many of the trailers have spoke about the Oasis, and you know, not like an advert for the actual console itself, but it's just like, well, I just escaped the Oasis. You don't really know why, but as the film progresses, I mean, it's a lot easier because I read the book, so this is where I think you're going to come as this best. It feels the stakes in the film don't feel high enough for the Oasis, but the further you get into the Oasis, the more the stakes build up in your head. That sounds very weird, like I haven't thought it through, but it's something that you get it and you start to get it, you start to like it more. But it's more the more you're learning about Halliday and his past, the more like the concept of the Oasis is even better.
Yeah.
And I think with the Oasis comes the visuals, and this is what threw me off in the first ever trailer was I knew it was going to be an in-game, I knew it was going to be them in another game and stuff, but I never thought it would be like a CG render, like the really good cutscene CG render. That's not an insult at all. I'm talking the ones that cost millions and billions, and this is not a cheap film to make. I think Spielberg said this has been the hardest films in terms of VFX since Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
it definitely is. It's so much of it takes place within this world, and to go from real worlds to sort of fake worlds. Because I thought it'd be more like the Matrix, like they're in this other world, but it's going to be live action. But actually, this was a gaming world, and I thought, do I say I mean, it's not graphics, it's visual effects, but they are stunning, and I would be very shocked if this doesn't win Best VFX at the Oscars next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it definitely deserves to win that Oscar. It did feel like you were watching like a really good video game cutscene though. Like you were just sort of like waiting to pick up the controller and like carry on playing a level. Or the racing world that you see in the trailer with all the cars and everything. Like that was like right out of the video game, which is what it's meant to be. I just wish I could have picked up like a PlayStation controller. Reminded me of something from like Burnout, or actually there was a game that came out for PlayStation called Split Second where you could sort of like activate things in the environment, like blow up buildings or make a wrecking ball come down to try and take out your opponents. Really reminded me of that. The first part of this movie is very information heavy. I would say the first 10 to 15 minutes is kind of just hitting you over the head with exposition, laying out the world, the rules, what you can purchase in the game and everything like that. And it did get to a stage where I was like, whoa, okay, you're throwing names at me now, all these things. It's quite a lot to take in. I mean, I don't actually think the title pops on screen until like the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie, which was surreal. I thought they were just going to bypass the entire title drop on the screen entirely. It is a lot. I guess it's kind of like Lord of the Rings in that respect, how you have to condense so much information. Like the prologue at the start of Lord of the Rings, you have to condense so much stuff in order to get on board with the world and to let the rest of the movie play out. You can either do an Inception approach where you kind of drop in exposition all the way through the movie as you go along, or you can just dump it all at the beginning, get it over with, and then get on with your movie. So it did feel like a lot at the beginning, but as soon as you're in the Oasis essentially and following the character of Wade, you kind of ignore all that exposition dump at the start and you just get invested in it. That's
exactly what my dad said, because I've read it. So I've been speaking to people. I've seen it with one of my friends. I said, first he said, "Did you understand it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's all right." So his daddy goes, "It took me 20 minutes, but once the plot really kicks off, then you naturally just start learning more and processing more." And I think that's a big part of it, because it is a lot of information. Lord of the Rings is a very good comparison, to be fair. Very different comparison.
Yes, yeah.
Because, I mean, the prologues are a lot easier to follow, but just, I mean, even in the book, the amount of stuff they dump on you in the first paragraph is absolutely insane. Not first paragraph, the first chapter.
Yeah.
So, and I think Spielberg tamed a lot of it, which is even more. I mean, can you picture learning more than that? Like, visually, it would have just been not a visual headache, but there was already a lot to learn, and I think they tell you the things that really you need to know. But it's such a hard concept to like show them straight away. And you're right, when the Ready Player One title does drop it so far in, it reminds of like a Transformers film, not in a nasty way, but they seem to get longer each. It's like Marvel does it now. I was watching Homecoming last night, and they originally used to have like 30-second like pre-credit scenes if they did it, and then like I think Homecoming has a scene and Black Panther has like 2 scenes. And now it's just the pre-credit scene's becoming more like a James Bond pre-credit scene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was going to say something. I had another negative. It sounds like I'm really hating on this movie, and I didn't, because I really enjoyed it. It's a good, entertaining experience. But another problem that I had with it was, it's sort of tying in with the stakes that I mentioned before, is the real world stuff. From the beginning of this movie, we are pretty much just thrown straight into the Oasis for a good amount of time before we snap out of it. We get like to see Wade like go from his house into the place where he goes into the virtual reality, but in terms of the world, we only get a little bit of it. And so I don't know if they should have stayed in that real world bit for the beginning of the film, really get to know Wade's character, really get to know the style of the world and his relationships and everything, and then get into the Oasis. But it does feel like it's just like, okay, boring. Let's just get to the stuff that people want, and it just throws you in there. Towards the last part of the movie, we get more real world stuff, but it felt like even at that stage, in terms of like the general population, like what is this like worldwide? Like we see it in Ohio, where the film's set, like that city, but we don't really get a global sense of how far reaching this Oasis is. It's like, even like in terms of his friends and stuff, like towards the end of the film, they just find him in the streets, like the real world equivalents of their characters just all meet up with each other and just find each other in Ohio. Like, what if they were like all international? Like, how would they get around that? So there's little bits like that. I felt they could have maybe dialed that up, but that would have tacked on like another 10, 15 minutes onto what is already a long movie. It's about 2 hours 20, and there were moments where I was like, you could like trim about 5 or 10 out of this maybe just to like get it a bit neater at the end.
Yeah, there are definitely some scenes which could have been trimmed. Some changes which added on time, some changes which took time away, but it was, I mean, I think my sister said that this is one of the longest things I've ever sat through, but that's because I think View broke the record and had 40 minutes of adverts before a film started. And not only that, but we had just some loud school kids that were buzzing to be out of school, who piped down as soon as the film started.
That's good.
For their benefit, they piped down, I think is the right words. But no, I completely get what you mean, because I'm not gonna say it, but there are some things that it is a global phenomenon. But you're right, when they keep it constructed within Columbus, it's kind of like, oh, you live there, I live here, they live there. Whereas in the book, I hate that word. You know, the international ones are international. They don't live close, so has to, you know, things happen in the book. But I think the one thing that's worth mentioning now actually is that the timeline of this is probably a couple of weeks. I mean, they say no one's found the eggs 5 years after he's died. That's like the book. But the actual, from the point of the film starting and the point of the end, feels like maybe a couple of weeks max.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas in the book, it does go over a year. But that's because you can't have that in a film. You just don't have that luxury. You don't have that time to do so. And I like what they did shortening it. And again, it makes it feel like more like an adventure rather than having these stop and start moments.
Yeah, and these like things that I'm bringing up didn't like hurt the movie for me. I just sort of like was aware of them, but I was just wrapped up with the movie and just entertained. It was like that popcorn shoveling kind of movie where you just go to the movies and have a good time. I guess I think I've pretty much said everything I can now before going into spoilers. I will say that Alan Silvestri score, I really did like the music to this. There are little musical cues related to the characters and references that you're seeing on screen, which I thought were really neat to throw in. Little Back to the Future references in there too, which are always good to hear. Really like the musical score. The soundtrack itself as well. I was expecting to hear some Rush in there, like the first trailer that came out, and I know that Rush, from what I've heard from you talking about the book, plays a big part in that movie. So it's a shame that we didn't get any Rush songs in the soundtrack, but you get Van Halen, you get Hall & Oates. God, what else do you get? I'm forgetting a big one, I think, as well.
You get Girls on Film, you get Dolly Parton,
Twisted Sister as well. Yeah, you get a whole bunch of stuff. So love the music in this film. And just overall recommendation, I'd absolutely recommend seeing this movie. It's your big budget blockbuster movie, just fun, have a good time. If you are into the references and things like that, you're going to love this movie. If you are a gamer, if you're into that kind of generation, there's a lot to like in this movie. The character development side is a little bit on the weak side, but the visual, it is a spectacular. It is a visual spectacular, and there are some things in this movie where it feels like I haven't seen them before. It is pushing what visuals can do because there are so many in the film. In terms of the environments and the amount of characters on screen, it's an absolute joy to watch, and it's Spielberg on fine form again. So I would recommend this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you should be watching anyway because it's a Spielberg film, but it's worth watching purely just because, not the visuals, but the concept of the Oasis. This is the best video game film ever done. I know it's
still Rampage. We've still got Rampage coming out.
I was going to say it's not a hard achievement at the minute, but I mean, this is like kind of there with Tron, like it's a video game film, but it's not. But it is. I think this will be one that people speak of. I say for years to come. I don't mean that in like like a Jaws or an Indiana Jones and stuff, but I feel that they'll look back at this year and like, oh, Ready Player One. People will watch this. I think for years to come.
Yeah,
it's going to be not a modern classic, but it's going to be something big where I think people speak of, and that's the best thing about film is if people remember it, people want to talk about it. But I think it's worth watching purely because it's Spielberg. It's got a great score. It's a throwback to the old cinema, new cinema, games as well. Music, it's great. It's worth it. I think Mark Rylance is fantastic.
Yeah.
The scenes it's got a compelling story, and I'm really trying hard not to spoil it.
I will say though, it's just great when you can compare this film to like The Post, and it's the same director. You know what I mean? Like he's so diverse in what he can.
He can do. I mean, we spoke in our Spielberg retrospective that everyone has to talk about Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out in the same year. Okay, this isn't The Post, wasn't Schindler's List, and this wasn't Jurassic Park, but very few directors could drop 2 films in a year that's one of either of those of quality, and Spielberg just does another 2, like it's nothing. I think because they delayed Star Wars by 3 months, he's like, right now I can just do The Post right now, and that's how it works. He didn't even think I'm going to have a rest for a couple of weeks. He's like, I'm just going to film this straight away, and he does what he wants, and he proved himself once again as the master, the greatest of all time.
Absolutely. It'd be interesting to see what he makes next. I'm sure he's got a lot of projects on the horizon. Indiana Jones 5, yeah.
And the West Side Story. But now he's changed that he wants to do them both in the same year. So
there's going to be your Oscar one then and the blockbuster one again, like the 2 films that he always does every year. I guess that does it for spoiler-free section then. So we're going to be getting into spoilers now. Beware, folks, there is going to be a lot of in the books, I'm assuming, in this section. I don't even know where to begin with this thing.
Neither do I.
Or because we don't want to sort of like list, and there's this character showed up in this character, because people know that that's what kind of movie it's going to be.
I mean, the film kind of begins with the death of James Halliday. That's not a spoiler, but the concept of the hunt, I think, is worth. I mean, we could speak about this in spoiler free, but I think the relationship, the concept of the hunt, is all about taking over the company and whatnot. And like I compare it to Steve Jobs and Wozniak, I think we didn't really speak much about Simon Pegg, but the entirety of the actual concept of this film is down to James Halliday being a lonely person trapped inside video games. That's the concept of the film. And I know this is more at the end, but I should be talking about this, but what this film does is that it brings in his relationship, not just with the co-founder, which is played by Simon Pegg, who I think is great with the scenes he gets given, but also very much goes into detail on the past of a girl that he liked, who ended up with his best friend, which ultimately does lead for them to break up. Now, the film does a fantastic job at showing Mark Rylance's relationship with the partner, whereas the book talks more about her obituary. The book reads her obituary, basically, and it just hints that James Halliday fancied her. And what Spielberg does, he takes over the book, he sees it and thinks, well, if I get the creation of the egg hunt around James Halliday's character, then Ogden Morrow and his wife are very, very important within all 3 keys. I think feel like I'm making stuff up on the spot because I'm blabbing on.
No, they are. They're all tied to his persona.
everything's tied into James's character, and I think this is the biggest thing is that I said earlier they make a lot of changes from the book, and I said to you, I mean, I filled you in quite a lot of it before we hit record. The biggest changes, they change all three. They have to get the keys, and they change all three. Similarities in a couple of them. They switch the orders round because Spielberg does this to make it a better film, to translate onto screen better. He had to make the right changes for the film, and he nailed it with these. And I guess with that, it would be the best way to go into each sort of scene, but not scene by scene, but each sort of challenge by challenge, because there's three of them. The first one is in all the trailers, the race. This didn't happen in the book.
It's like a movie though. Like, you want to get the audience's attention right from the off, so you've got to open with something big, a big action scene, and that's what this scene serves.
I absolutely loved I was scared because I thought the race was like not a trailer scene because it's too expensive for that, but I thought the race was going to be like the opening scene, like Welcome to the Oasis, and it kind of was. But by putting it into the story, it actually takes maybe 10-15 minutes off what it could have been longer. But the chase was the one that felt the most irrelevant to the character of Mike Rylance. However, it gives you the best insight into the world of the Oasis, and what it gives you an insight into the IOI, the Sixers. It gives you insight into some of the lead characters, H, Parzival, Artemis, and this is where you get your first batch of mega references. I mean, it's in the trailers. They go on a big race. He's got a DeLorean. You look around and you'll see famous vehicles from loads of other films.
60s Batmobile was one of my favorite ones.
And that even got like a lingering shot, like they definitely kept on there for some reason. King Kong was a beautiful addition to this, and he actually did a lot more. In the trailer, you just see him jump off the Empire State, and I thought, oh, that's just going to be his reference.
Lincoln, you'll miss it reference. He tears up the city.
He's a big part of the race. He's destroying the track, and basically they say it's impossible for someone to get past Kong to get to the finish line. And then they go into the am I really going it step by step? But basically they then find a way. Whereas in the book, this is what I like. In the book, Parsifal's at like a school within the Oasis called Ludus. It is referenced in the film. I did see it on the second viewing. And within the school is actually hidden the first key. It's in the school grounds and a mountain. The character James Halliday created a game, basically Dungeons and Dragons, and he has to go in there, speak some Latin, and then he has to play the godly avatar of James Halliday at Joust, the old 80s game. He has to beat him in a best out of 3. If he can beat him in best out of 3, he wins the key.
I don't think that would have translated.
Precisely. It works in a book, but could you imagine visually? One of your key scenes is 2 people on an arcade machine. Like, it works somewhere else when they do something later on. That's very different, but that would have been such a waste of time. Whereas the race, it gets you really like in the mood. Like, okay, this is the Oasis. This is their imagination. We've got a T-Rex here destroying cars. We've got Kong here. We've got this insane track spread out all across New York. And welcome to the Oasis. That's your demo, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the visuals as well, like, so much happens in this race. It's chaotic. It's absolutely insane. Like, fair play to all of the animators. It must have took them God knows how many years or months or whatever. I don't know how long post-production takes. I can assume this takes a long time. I will say, though, as well, with Kong, I might actually prefer this Kong to what we got in Kong Skull Island, and maybe even the Peter Jackson one. In terms of the look, it looks more like a CGI version of the original 30s Kong, which is my favorite Kong.
It looks like a cross between the two Jackson. It looks like it's got like the Kong Skull Island's more your classic cartoon, not cartoony, but that's your kind of animated Kong, which it isn't, but it is. And then the Jackson's your real life. This is like the blend between the two, which I guess works within the game because it's in the gaming world as well. It doesn't look out of place with it being CG.
And Silvestri uses a little bit of the original 30s King Kong fanfare as well, which I thought was really cool when he shows up and like on the track. But basically, they get the key through the fact that the character of Wade goes into like this video archive essentially, and I think that pretty much all of what's his name? Halliday. Halliday's life is archived. Pretty much every movie he's seen, every key pivotal moment of his life is saved in almost like this walk-in visual booth kind of thing where you can walk in and like fast forward and search certain bits that he said. and he was resistant to the idea of his company, you know, going in a more of a business angle and like monetizing it and making it global. He wanted to keep it simple, sort of like keep close to his chest the simple idea that he came up with when it was like an innocent idea for fun, because like he played video games as a kid. And he says, why can't we go backwards instead of always trying to make the company something different instead of going forwards? And then Wade clocks onto this, and that's why he realizes that he needs to reverse on the racetrack rather than going with everyone else.
Full speed backwards as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like Bill and Ted. I still haven't seen Bill and Ted. That's on my fault. Sorry, Keanu. But yeah, and that's how he wins the first challenge. And they're smart with this. He meets Artemis through this, and she basically sees him stopping at the back of the grid. So she knows something's happened. He tells his mate H. H tells the other two. There's your high five. The first ever people on the scoreboard. That's how the concept is phrased, the high five.
So in the book, does he meet her there for the first time, or is it because in the film they have some kind of history, like they're both aware of each other and have seen each other in other worlds?
On the pages, basically he meets her. No one's ever cracked a clue on the first challenge, and before he meets her after he plays joust and wins. She's known about it for a couple of days, but she can't beat him at joust to get one go a day. And they meet via that, and then they realize that he's number one. And she goes mental, and he basically, because he fancies, he gives her a tip like play on the other side and it might be different. So the order in which he wins first, she's second, H is third, Shy and Doto are fourth and fifth. They still keep that, and they keep this within the second and third challenge. Almost every plot point of what the characters do with one another stays, except one big one, which we'll get to. But he's very much a fanboy that fancies, they keep that, and they do grow close. They grow close, which again they keep, and then that leads to the second clue, which changes in the book. It basically goes, he's been a celebrity for a couple of months. He's took his eye off, as the Green Goblin say, you've took your eyes off the ball, and he's basically in love with her. And at a dance, he tells her that he says his real name, and she's like, I can't say anymore. This is way too much. You know what I look like. Blah blah blah. Now, in the film, again, they make this better by IROC's not the best of characters, but by making a villain within that scene, it gives IOI a tool to find him in real life, which he gets from the real life stuff. And basically summed up, I guess, the next big thing is that Krennic basically has a meeting with him where he says, work for me, unlimited budget, unlimited tools, whatever you want in the entire world, you just win us the egg, and you'll be a rich man. You can all be happy ever after. And basically, Parzival says, no, like you're a fraud.
I liked that, though, how I guess, and this is kind of the same for most like managers of businesses, where they're kind of just in it for like the numbers and like spreadsheets and stuff like that, and they're not really invested in the company that they run. So obviously he's like internet, pop culture, everything like that. And he's got people essentially like geeks in his ear, like feeding him all the information through the earpiece.
It was a funny bit. It was like a funny bit. He goes, I like to play Robotrop or whatever it was. And you can. It was like they just cut someone else like, yes, he's tricking you. It's a trick. Don't say that school. Don't say that school.
Yeah.
And it's like quite funny, and they know it, but this leads to basically, because they know his identity. Parzival doesn't know. As he's losing, Krennic basically just turns around and says, "I know who you are. I'm going to kill you now. I'm going to kill everyone because you're ghetto trash." Basically, in the future, have you seen the trailers? They live in these giant stacks of like trailer trash together. It's filmed in Birmingham, which is another good example around here. It genuinely was filmed.
Perfect location.
It was though, wasn't it? For like the poor parts. No, not poor parts, but the grim parts. That's the better word. And basically, he realizes his aunt. There's a rubbish side story that he's got an aunt. And she's nice, but she picks the wrong blokes.
The guy from Game of Thrones.
He was in Last Jedi for one shit. What or not? He was in Last Jedi for one shot. That's a different film. He was in the Last Jedi for like one shot. He's in The Office, the UK one. He's been in loads of big franchises.
He was in The Witch as well. He's got like a really gravelly voice, like easily identifiable.
Yeah, he's proper like Northern British, and he's a space marine. Actually, I loved his avatar as a space marine. That was really cool seeing that in the film. Didn't think we'd ever get that, but basically, Krennic blows them all up. It's wonderful, and the way he says it as well, like he just doesn't care. He's like, I'm happy he said no to me because I win this just for my own sake and so that I'm winning it myself. And
I was expecting it to like cut back to the company, and he's like watching it on a monitor, like, oh, it's
beautiful.
beautiful. Like,
that's all I could think of. Like, he's the exact same character.
Yeah.
And so there's your big real life change. And then the difference with this is that in the book, he then goes off. He just gets on a train, buys himself a really rich penthouse because he's famous now in the game. He can use his in-game credits to buy real life stuff. He buys himself this. He gets really good internet, new suit, new tech, etc., etc. Whereas in the film now, they then actually, take a narrative choice to introduce the character of Artemis in real life. Basically, say there's a resistance, even though it's not really a resistance concept as such, because they're not ruling the world yet. But there's like an underground group of people rallying up against IOI. And this is what I love. This is the kind of thing you need in a film where you just can't have them getting on a train disappearing for a couple of months. So he meets Artemis. She's all pretty in the game, but I guess in real life she thinks she's ugly just because she's got a big birthmark on her face. They make the whole concept of you can fall in love online.
Don't get catfished, folks.
Yeah, I was going to say, which happens later on in the film in a different way.
Yeah,
but I think that's a big change. I mean, it's fine. They meet earlier. They've got good chemistry. They're there to save the world together. Letitia Wright from Black Panther, she's in the background for one shot. And because I think they obviously filmed it before she had a breakthrough, I think, in Black Mirror.
Yes,
but that was quite funny because I knew she was in the film. I said everyone else, and then no one thought it was literally for one shot. And then I guess the big one for the second challenge, right?
This was my favorite bit of the movie. I did not see this coming at all. No. I didn't know if it was in the book. Like I've realized now that it isn't. So it was an absolute inspired choice. They find that the second clue will be in a movie theater, and it will be, I think the clue is something about a creator hating his own creation or something like that. So they bring up a big like collection of all the movies that Holiday watched like in a certain week or something like that. They name drop Cronenberg's The Fly, which I thought was great. And they figure out that it's The Shining because Stephen King hated the movie, the Stanley Kubrick adaptation of his book. And they go into the movie theater. Now, I was expecting it just to be like a movie theater and you'd get like a clip of the movie on screen. We don't get that at all. We get like an actual recreation of the Overlook Hotel. They mimic certain camera angles, certain shots. The music starts playing. And I couldn't tell if they actually shot on location there again because it did look so lifelike. I didn't know if they created it all in CGI because it didn't look CGI. I think a lot of the times they blend the stock footage from the actual movie in with, enhancements, and like there'll be actors that double for the characters that are in the movie. You get the twin girls, you get the creepy woman. They do it all. You get the ballroom, the creepy woman in the bathtub, the maze. It's all there. And I absolutely love The Shining. It's my favorite horror film of all time. So just going back into that environment and the stuff they do there, didn't see it coming, caught me completely off guard. And I think I'll be hard pushed this year to find another scene in the movie that filled me with as much joy as this one did. This
is probably one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen at cinema. Yeah. Purely because, as everyone knows, I don't like horror films much. I don't get scared easy by Jaws. Shining, I've always said I love it. I'm a Kubrick fan. But to me, it's not horror. It's the psychological thriller. But it was when in the film where they're picking the films. And basically in the book, they do this to two films where they go into challenges. One's War Games. There's Monty Python. And I know that they weren't going to have Monty Python. And I remember one of the actors saying, we've got a film, but wait till you see what it is. And I started thinking, well, is it going to be Indiana Jones? Is it going to be this? In the life of me, I never, ever thought in my lifetime that The Shining would be in a 12A.
Yeah.
When the VHS cover turns and it's like The Shining, I was like, no way. Like, no way are they going to do this. Like, and then they play the music. And they go in, and I genuinely had like a jaw-dropping moment. I haven't had this since The Force Awakens when they showed Snoke. Really random choice. But I remember I just didn't drink my drink. It was in my mouth. And with this, it was like, oh shit, like they've gone into The Shining. But then when I saw that set, I just sat there like amazed, like how on earth did this happen? Because I can't wait to see some behind-the-scenes stuff of this because I genuinely think that they've rebuilt the entire set.
Yeah, like blueprint by blueprint. Like
Spielberg and Kubrick were good friends, and I think they had such high respect for one another. And I think this is probably Spielberg's like Easter egg love letter to Kubrick. And just seeing them in the room, I was just there like, no way, like this is amazing. And then it just gets better when the tennis ball comes. I heard on Wednesday, people were like you were hearing stuff. And then H, the character who's the comic relief, she goes, is this a scary film? Like, I've never seen it. And you're just there like subtly laughing. And then the bit that really got me, I think I actually said like, oh, fuck, was when he comes out the room and the twins are there.
Yeah.
Because I was just processing that like a 2018 film has gone out and put a new character within The Shining. And I know it does it I know in the book it does this, but I never thought they'd be able to ever transition something like this to a modern day film. And it was just it felt like fun comic relief. Like, I had so much respect for everything, but it was so funny, but just so amazing and original. I know they're in The Shining, but it felt so original that this character's like, hey girls, like, how do I get out of here? So they just go into the elevator and exactly what's coming next. And I just that 10 minutes was just amazing.
Yeah, like I want to see this movie again purely just for that scene. But it was everything. It was like just so like it's clearly a love letter to Kubrick. You get like the photo on the wall, the black and white one at the very end of The Shining with Nicholson. If I was going to say like what would have been just the cherry on top of the cake is when you see those feet in the maze with the axe chasing after them. If it would have cut to some stock footage of Jack Nicholson, but with how Nicholson is, I don't know if he would have demanded like millions of dollars just to use his likeness in a movie or something like that.
And that's the thing, like they do the room 287, and he falls back onto the door. And I should have assumed they were going to do the door, because I'm used to seeing the woman like screaming on the floor, just getting it straight into the back of H. I was like, oh, I like jumped because it's such a good jump scare, and it was just amazing, like re-seeing it. Like the maze was great, and that's what I thought, because they showed the legs, and I thought they're going to pan around. It is going to be Nicholson, but part of me I really wish it had been. I'm sure someone will do an edit one day and just chuck a couple of quotes on. But seeing The Shining like that is just something I've not seen before, and it was amazing. And then within this second challenge, they then have to basically, with James, this goes into Halliday's story more, that the girl he liked, he'd met before his friend had, and she wanted to go out dancing, and instead he took her to the cinema to watch The Shining. And that's how this concept came. And the clues like you take a leap of faith, because he was too scared to kiss her and to take her out for a dance. They basically have the original actress of the woman. I say the original actress, but like just the actress of whoever she was, dancing with zombies, and the challenge is that they've got to basically dance with her or ask her to dance and get to her. And I thought that was a really smart way, because it builds up the character relationship with James Halliday again, makes it more personal. It made for an amazing Shining scene, and then the challenge itself. And then we get one of the greatest comic relief moments after, when you've cut to the headquarters of Krennic's team, and they're just doing the Shining challenge. And then there's like just this montage of like people screaming and dying within it. It's just it's absolutely great.
No, I love that. I did think the challenge was a little bit strange itself, but there is a line in there which says like, this was like a level on the first video game that he ever made or something, wasn't it? Like this zombie jumping
something like that,
I think maybe if they wanted to keep it more to The Shining, you could have had just the regular ballroom and just had like hundreds of people on the dance floor, and maybe you had to like push past people and try and find her. Maybe they could have done that. And then I guess that takes us on to challenge 3 then. So it's kind of like when the movie comes to a head, it's that big fight you see where the resistance rises up. That was actually a great moment, though, where you have the typical archetypal hero speech. There's that moment where you think no one's going to show up, and then just on the horizon, like the entire stretch of the sky, just like armies and armies of people and everything like that. That was a really cool moment. The final challenge essentially is that you need to play a video game. I think it's, out of all the games that were ever released for Atari, there's one game in there where the final key will be. And you've got loads of workers working for the evil corporation, sort of going one by one, picking each game, dying each time if it's not that right game. There is like a huge plot hole though with this bit, and it was kind of hilarious when it happened in the movie. So there's this woman, this red-haired woman, who's sort of clued up.
Ginny Weasley.
Yes. Was that actually her?
No, but it just looked like.
Okay, I was going to say, oh my god. So obviously, like, you get the impression that like tens or hundreds of these workers in like the video game world are dying because they can't get the right video game. And eventually Wade finds the correct video game and is like going all through it, and he's like giving the history of like the first ever Easter egg in a video game ever by the creator. And then she just pipes up like, "Oh yeah, like it was common knowledge. Like, oh yeah, this video game, this was the first one to have ever Easter egg in. Blah blah blah." It's like, well, why didn't you open with that? If you clearly know this, why didn't you just save all the hassle? Like, you could have got to the key ages ago. Like, if you know all this information.
She did pick the game, but they thought they had to win it. But he just thought,
Yeah.
"Oh, no, you have to play." But she wasn't. She just had one of them faces on someone that's just there, like, "Oh, here," because there's a group in the war. They're Halliday scholars that they basically have a degree in the history of James Halliday, trying to get to the hunt and stuff. And yeah, it's not my favorite character. I know she's like got like 5 lines, but it's still 5 lines too many. It's just her being a geek for the sake of being a geek, wasn't it?
But it's like she knew everything about how to get to the Easter egg, where it was located in the game, how to activate it, and like this never crossed your mind to raise this to Mendelssohn or any of the other people that are dying. Like,
it was true. It was very odd.
Yeah. I thought that was a nice ending, though. I thought the final challenge was really good because that's where it gets more. I'd say each one gets more personal to Halliday as a character.
Yeah, and I think this is why the changes work, because essentially this is about gaming. So the third challenge should be a not gaming challenge, but be related to within the Easter egg and whatnot. Whereas, you know, in the book, the third challenge is, I think they do Tempest, or they play one of the old games similar to that. I think they do something like that, and then they go into Monty Python after the entire film, and then it's just kind of like, okay, I get why they did that, but then it just works a lot better being individual to the story. It's about gaming.
Well, you get your Monty Python reference through the holy hand grenade, and that's it, isn't it? That's the only thing.
Yeah, but before that though, we do have the battle.
Yes.
Literally, it reminded me of the Battle of Hogwarts. There's a castle with a gigantic shield over the top.
Yeah.
And then he's called upon all the armies to come and attack. And this is going to be like the Easter egg sort of frame freeze. Watch the entire. You can see the thing from Aliens, the yellow. I forgot the name of it. Ripley's thing.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean.
What are they called? Yeah.
There's one in there. There's everything. There's a Chucky, where they activate Chucky, and then there's a brilliant comedy moment where they throw the Chucky at the Sixers, and it cuts to Sixers like, wait, it's fucking Chucky, and then it just goes red, and you just know that he's killed them all.
Did Chucky come out the screen in 3D?
I can't actually remember. It wasn't like the gimmicky 3D. It was like the depth 3D, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's a shame.
But like the Chucky scene had one of the best laughs of the entire film. Yeah. Like, it was great. But that is the moment where, you know, there's all this amazing. There's a lot of comic relief in these scenes, but there is one true moment. We know the Iron Giant's going to be in this film, and we've known this since the day this film got. I mean, he was in the original book. They upgraded his role. It's all owned by Warner Bros. You know, he'd be more important. They brought Vin Diesel back, even though he just makes noises again. But who do you get to rival the Iron Giant in a duel? And the book, without a doubt, the greatest paragraph ever put to page is in the Ready Player One book. And I remember stopping. I remember reading the paragraph, stopping, taking a picture, and sending it to you before I carried on. And it was kind of there, like Sorrento, like smiles, or like he blah blah blah. He does an evil smile. He takes out of his inventory a tiny sort of like monster. Well, basically
dinosaur toy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's like he stands in it, and then he turns into Mechagodzilla or pilots it. I don't know. It's a lot better in the paragraph, but the moment I read that, I knew this film needed this. If this did not have Mechagodzilla, I would have probably cried.
And I think with your picture you sent to me, you were like, Chris, like Krennic's gonna ride Mechagodzilla in the movie. I was like, oh, make that happen, Spielberg, please. As soon as he did it and he like started to like you know, activate it, I was like, it has to be like, this is a key moment in the book, come on. And it's incredible. It's everything. I kind of wish that fight was a little bit longer, in all honesty. Like, I'd love just seeing that slanging match between Iron Giant and Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, there was a great fight, and Godzilla, I mean, Iron Giant's big because he's the Iron Giant, but then like he's tiny compared to Mechagodzilla, and Mechagodzilla's playing with him. He's burning his back, he's roasting him and everything. And then the Japanese warrior has to bring on Gundam.
Gundam, yeah, that's it.
He activates Gundam because obviously the Japanese person has to apparently have these stereotypical Japanese characters. In the book, it's Ultraman, proves it even more. And then there's a fight that ensues between the two of them. Sacrifices himself to basically help the kill done by the Iron Giant later on. I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but I'm not. There's just you got to go see it. I'm not going to describe I'm not going to describe Krennic piloting a Mechagodzilla into a battle.
I think after this scene, though, this is where the pacing really starts to drag for me, because it's that kind of thing. Again, you can compare to Lord of the Rings. I mean, I love Return of the King, but I know a lot of people have a problem with the ending, is that you kind of want your ending, your big action scene, to kind of be wrapped up neatly with your ending. Like, a good example of this is the original Star Wars movie. You blow up the Death Star, boom, go back, get your medals, end of movie, everything tied up. With this, you have your big action climax with that battle, and you expect that to be close to the end, but it goes on for like another 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes.
They had a real life sort of chase scene, which
it reminded me of Inception so much.
Yeah, well, Inception. No, with me, what hit me with Inception is that they basically perform Inception on Ben Mendelsohn halfway through the film, where they basically pretend they're in his office when they're not, and they're playing a projection on him for him to give away information.
Yeah.
And that was the Inception moment. But with the van stuff, I don't feel like they needed it. I mean, they had to put in because they decided to create a story within the real life stuff. But you think Krennic's done and dusted, he's out, and then he just gets in a van and just starts attacking. And it's annoying because he gets to the part where, he's got the final crystal key, he's got all three, he's putting them in, and they're driving into the van, and he's going to fly in the game as well. And it adds a couple of minutes on, but you just want to get into the cave to get the Easter egg, which he does. It's a great moment. They then basically have a fourth. They're basically doing the "you've chosen wisely" thing, where he just says, sign this paper and you will own the Oasis, no one else, blah, blah, blah. It's another challenge. And he says, no, I won't sign this. Like, your biggest mistake in your life was basically finishing it with Og, and I won't make your mistake. And it's a test. It's not in the book. This is something new added in. Oh, I may be wrong because I've only read the book once, but I thought it was a touching moment to reflect upon Halliday. And then you get probably one of my favorite scenes of the film, maybe the most powerful scene, which is it then cuts to, it's within the game still, but James Halliday's then created his real life attic himself as like human and stuff like that. Talked to Parzival about the Oasis and the plans and stuff, and it's a really touching scene, I thought, and it was a great scene. But then you get the issue of that because they're doing this real life fight outside, it just adds and it takes it away from the scene.
It added that kind of ticking clock kind of thing. It added a little bit more urgency, added a little bit more drama, which didn't really need to be there because there was already that immediate urgency anyway. I wanted to talk to you about that Halliday scene though. So it's kind of cryptic at the end because he says like, "You're not an avatar, are you?" And he says like, "Well, are you alive then? Have you did you fake your death? Have you taken settlement up here?" And he says like, "No, I am dead." And he's like, "Well, what are you then?" And then he just says like, "Enjoy my game, Wade," or something like that, and then leaves. So I interpret it as that, in that he is dead. Halliday is dead. This isn't an avatar, but this is some kind of consciousness of Halliday within Wade, and he was like projecting it. I don't know. This probably isn't in the book. It was probably a movie creation, but it kind of threw me a little bit. It was like that moment in Harry Potter Deathly Hallows Part 2 with Dumbledore in the Heavenly train station. I don't know what you made of that scene. Was that still just like an avatar in the game, even though he said it wasn't?
I felt it was because they talk about how he can do the 3D projections of his, into human, blah blah blah. I feel as if he programmed it, and it's just a very, very well detailed simulation.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know. I think they want it to be open ended. The question is he alive? I mean, I think he's dead personally.
Yeah.
And if he is alive, he just wanted to hand over his company to someone worthy of having it. But I think he's dead. But I thought because he's such a very weird character. If you look at James Halliday, the scenes they show in the film, when they've got flashbacks to the kind of the sort of product unveilings in the past, like your demos, he's sat there open mouthed, staring into space.
He definitely seems like he's on the spectrum a little bit.
Yeah. He's the ultimate. He doesn't want to be. He just wants to make games. That's in the book. They detail his life so well because it's pages, and they basically gone about how he just wanted to make games. He'd lock himself in his office for weeks at a time working on things. He disappeared from public life to make the Oasis. And he's this really inventive, crazy guy that just loves gaming, and that's why there shows kids crying at the start. The way it's in the book, I mean, if Steve Jobs passed away, that was humongous. This is the way they describe him. This is almost godlike to the world because of what he created, like even bigger than something like Bill Gates. And I just thought it was just a part of his character, like that he was a bit quirky and a bit weird, and that he wanted that ambiguous ending. But I think he definitely is dead.
Yeah. And yes, so he gets the egg, and he kind of has this like godly moment where he's like looks into the Ark of the Covenant. Well, not no face meltings in this movie, but that kind of surreal experience, and it kind of turns Ben Mendelsohn. He stops being a villain. He doesn't want to kill Wade, like, because he's taken in by like the beauty of the moment. I guess it's a very weird ending. He gets carted away in a police car, and it ends on kind of a nice moral message in that it's okay to video game every once in a while, but don't like be one of the kids from this generation where all they're doing is gaming. Like the real world's important as well. I thought that was kind of a nice thing. It does feel like a love letter to gamers out there, people who create video games, people who are creative or artistic in some way. I thought it was a nice way to end the film. Possibly open-ended, maybe, if they did ever want to do a sequel, in that Ben Mendelsohn goes to prison, no one dies, everything's fine, everyone's good.
Yeah, it is got kind of open-ended. There is talk that he might write a second book, which I really don't want them to do because I feel like this should be one and done. I couldn't imagine Spielberg wanting to come back for a sequel. I could be wrong.
It's like Wade breaks the internet or something.
Oh, yeah. Like Krennic breaks out of prison. He's a man on a mission.
Yeah.
With his Mechagodzilla in the Oasis. But it's got, it ties the knot. It's got the happy ending. They get together. He chooses to rule with the high five together. They shut the Oasis off 2 days a week. That made me laugh. I don't know why it did. But it just ties up into a neat little bow, self-constructed story. It's finished now. This has happened. That's happened. The world's a better place.
Yeah, it sounds to me, I mean, I haven't read the book. I might read the book at some point just to get a comparison out of it. It seems to me that I would prefer the movie with how they've streamlined it down. They've cut all the fat out of it. They've cut loads of the references that are kind of pointless. And it seems like they've made it more of a personal movie with like Halliday's character in terms of the challenges. And I think that would work better for the movie.
The book is great at character, not development, but for learning about the characters, the book is beautiful. Like you learn every single, like how across the Harry Potter books, you learn so much about the characters. The J.K. Rowling's got this wisdom up there. When you read the book, you learn so much about the characters that you grow with them. But then, story-wise, I loved it, but it's not the greatest story in the world. It's not perfect. And I think the transition into film, Spielberg has done the right thing. I don't know if I said this to you or to my dad, but I feel as if this Spielberg took the film, he's read the book, he's probably got a book of notes as well and other stuff, and he's probably said, listen, I want my story to come first. This is what I plan on doing, and then I'm going to get your references to accommodate the story I'm trying to tell. I feel that that's what happened, whereas the book, it's like the 50-50 split, whereas it should be 80-20 story and references and what. Because the film can't work without references. Well, sorry, the book can't, but the film, the half could. It can't, but it can. It's one of those very weird ones.
It's just a question of adaptation. Like, you can change the source material into completely something different. Shining, to stick with this movie, Shining's a great example of that, in that you could adapt it 100% faithful. It might be okay, or you can do your own thing with it. As long as you've got a good director who can still form a cohesive story out of it, cut out the things that don't work and adapt it in a good way, then you're going to get a good movie out of it. You might get some book purists out of there that are going to be upset that this scene wasn't in there or they trimmed that, but that's just like any adaptation. When you're adapting anything, you've got to cut some stuff out because you don't have the 8, 9, 10 hours, however long it is, to actually, read the book.
The two major things they cut, which I didn't like, is in the book of the high five, in real life, IOI killed Dato, who's the older of the ninjas. Basically, they're on one. They question the second key. They get ambushed, and he basically comes out and says, "Oh no, I think someone's here." And then basically, what happens is that the IOI basically take the real life person, just chuck him off the top of a skyscraper, and he's obviously dead. He doesn't survive that. So it drops to 4 in the book, which I thought it improved the stakes within the book more, because in the film they wanted a happy ending. And the other thing is with the character Simon Pegg. I don't want to say I'm disappointed because I like what they did with him. They make him the curator of the Halliday journals, and right at the end he comes out and says, he didn't tell me anything about this contest, so I just gave you this extra. Sorry, I just gave you the extra life coin because you want to bet with me. In the book, I'm happy they cut this bit that basically Parzival thinks he's got the second key. He thinks he's worked it all out. He basically he goes into like one of Halliday's journals. He's at the back. He's at an arcade he's found within a game of his or something, and he beats Halliday's Pac-Man high score record. And you think, oh, well, this is going to be the second key, but they just give him a coin. And he's like furious. He just takes the coin, but he's furious. He's wasted all this time. That coin is the second life. Obviously, you can't just have someone playing a computer in a film. It wouldn't work. No. It's a really good scene in the book, though. But then the other thing is, in the film, Ogden gives him the coin of the bet. That's a nice touch. But Ogden in the book is, they basically talk at the end. He saves them all. He gets the four of them together, and he basically says, "You know, I'm Ogden Morrow. I'm flying him over from Japan. I'm flying you over to my mansion. I'm flying everyone over. You're going to come and complete this quest at my house in my private mansion with the best Oasis servers." And then they basically reveal that him and Halliday fell out and whatnot. And that on Halliday's on his deathbed, he basically contacted him and they said, "I'm dying. I've made all these mistakes in my life, blah, blah, blah." But the biggest one was obviously losing you as a friend. And he says he tells Ogden Morrow about the entirety of the plan of the hunt, and he wants him to overwatch it and not be involved at all. Whereas the film, I wish they would have put that I wish they would have done the mansion stuff. It might have added too much time or too much more money. But Ogden pops up. He's like, "Oh, I was the curator after all," and it's nice. But I think that's the one thing where I think the book did do a lot better was how they had Ogden Morrow in it. Because especially when he sees how prominent he's on the posters and whatnot. And Simon Pegg is a great actor, but it was still fun. The changes what they did work for the film better than what it could have done as the book.
I do get the impression that maybe towards the end of this film a lot was cut out, or there will be some deleted scenes, either finished visually or just, you know, concept storyboards or anything like that that didn't get filmed in time. I do get the idea that they'll probably be on the Blu-ray when it comes out, but no, I think I've said pretty much everything I can on the film. We've gone beginning to end pretty much on this one. Final recommendation, definitely go and see it. It's an absolute visual spectacle. See it on the biggest screen you can, best sound system you can. If you're a gamer, if you like all those references, if you are a stickler for that, then you are going to like this movie. It's well directed, well acted, solid, entertaining movie. Don't think too much about it. Not so much character development, but if you're in it for the action and just the visual spectacle of it, you're going to have a great time with it.
Yeah, I'd say I'd recommend this film. See it at the biggest screen you can. Sounds amazing. Definitely try and IMAX it. I know some IMAXs do 2D, they don't like your 3D, but even the 3D is not that bad. You've got some great performances, I think. Definitely interesting character tracks. It's definitely worth it for Mark Rylance and Ben Mendelsohn. It's a Steven Spielberg film. No more needs to be said than that. But it's visually stunning. This is something that is worth watching on the big screen better than a small screen, and just to see more about it, because I've got a feeling this is going to be one of these films that over the coming months, everyone's going to be talking about it so much, where it's going to not lose its touch, but the Shining scene's one of the nicest surprises I've ever had at a cinema. I would hate for that to have been spoiled for me. So it's one of those, just try and get to it soon before people are talking about it too much. Yeah. Go in blank and just relax, switch your head off for 2 hours and have a good time.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for our review on Ready Player One. Be sure to comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Have you read the book? Do you prefer the book? Anything Ready Player One or Spielberg related, please do let us know. If you enjoyed our review and you liked us talking about Spielberg, be sure to check out our previous video where we did a retrospective on Spielberg. We went through pretty much all of his movies. It was a great roundtable discussion, really informal, talking about some of our favorite films of his. So absolutely check that out too. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we are gearing up towards, well, we're into April tomorrow, so we're going to be going all out Marvel this month, I think, in lead up to Infinity War. So do you want to pitch your
there's going to be a show. It's going to be every day, 18 days of Marvel, where I go on and I talk about a Marvel film in chronological order. I haven't figured out the 99.99% logistics, but I have most of it. So much so that last night I had to rewatch Spider-Man Homecoming. Which that was an experience.
I'm so glad I'm not doing this series with you. Like, you go ahead. You watch Spider-Man Homecoming again.
I must confess, it was in the background to me sorting out the World Cup sticker book, but nonetheless, I still saw it in the corner of my eye and had to hear it for 2 hours. And I think the only one I've got left to watch is Doctor Strange and maybe Ragnarok, just to get a better understanding. but they should be starting from April the 8th or 9th. So next weekend, I think. Next Sunday, maybe?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, next weekend. Yeah.
So I'm sure there'll be a trailer on the channel, an introductory video coming soon. But April is going to be a big Marvel month. Hopefully, we get ourselves a battle of the bracket. Tate's returning home at some point. But April's all about Marvel, and then May's Han Solo. Because why aren't we going to talk about the Star Wars film we all want to watch?
Definitely. We've got a lot of big films coming out this summer. So if you're into your movies, if you've just discovered us through this video, please do hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot more content coming your way. That'll do it for our video for right now. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.